So the decision has been made. In the most recent update I done on this channel, I spoke about potentially selling all of my crypto. I'm going to talk about that in tonight's update, along with a few other key interesting things, in particular, things that are happening over this week and next. Factors are all building up here, guys. Plenty to cover off in tonight's update. Let's get into it. Fantastic to have you all back with us once again. So I have been talking recently about potentially selling the crypto that I do hold for many reasons. We're going to talk about that further today and the decision that I have made. Now, most recently, we have seen Bitcoin really run to the upside. We are getting ever closer to the all-time high of 69,000 US dollars. Now we can already see the likes of the Great British Pound and the Australian dollar setting new all-time highs with Bitcoin here. So is it just a matter of time until the US dollar versus Bitcoin sets the new all-time high? Crucially, last week, failing to close the candle above $64,000, this would have seen the second highest weekly close for Bitcoin in history. Closing that candle at 63,113, we of course seen pullbacks within this weekly candle, but overall we have started out this week in a bullish narrative, so far seeing the price push up to $65,646. So all of that is of course fantastic, but we have to ask what is going on behind the scenes. We know a vast amount of money is flowing into Bitcoin due to the ETFs, and the ETFs raise some really interesting figures. The miners are struggling here after the ETF launch, except one. This has obviously been reported that several firms are trading flat or are actually losing money. Riot Platforms falling 6.2%. Energy, or Iron, has sunk 11%. Bitfarms and Marathon Digital, they've appreciated, but only slightly, at 5 and 17% respectively. The one that is in healthy profits right now we can see is BlackRock's iShares Bitcoin Trust, the IBIT. This is up 35% since the moment that it launched. Incredibly bullish for BlackRock. But as we of course know, the upcoming halving in April, we will see Bitcoin rewards permanently fall to 3.125 Bitcoin per block. Something you really need to be, keeping your finger on here, understanding how much Bitcoin will be mined over how much Bitcoin is required for these ETFs. Now, due to this, we of course see that the miner reserves of outflows are at a record. Miners are either selling off their Bitcoin holdings or leveraging coins to raise capital. This is not a sustainable model. With Cointelegraph here noting over $1 billion of Bitcoin came from the miner wallets to exchanges in the first 48 hours of trading. Why do I feel this is important? Well, when they can no longer make profit from mining, there is a lack of Bitcoin left to be mined. Well, there then becomes an issue of supply for Bitcoin. Now, yes, that is a bullish narrative. A lack of supply will of course drive the price of Bitcoin up, and we'll see it set new highs. We can see that Bitcoin is currently taking out 10 times more Bitcoin than the miners can produce. Interesting figure we do have here is over 10,280 Bitcoin went to Bitcoin ETFs as of February 12th. With BlackRock's iShares Bitcoin Trust, they took a whopping $374.7 million. Fidelity with $151 million. ARK Invest with over $40 million. Grayscale at $95 million. Then Invesco Galaxy at $20.8. So these ETFs are vast and they're incredibly bullish for the space as a whole. So of course, the question begs, why would I consider taking profits? Well, in the last video, I hope it came across very wholesome, canvassing the community, our viewers, to get your thoughts and opinions on this. Now, the profits that are sitting there are quite literally life-changing. It doesn't matter the figure. It's absolutely nobody's right to know the figure. But for me personally, it's life-changing. Paying off mortgages, buying a new house, the list goes on. It is an unbelievable opportunity. So yes, as some of these comments did say, it is gambling on emotions, and it most certainly is. But when you get to the point in your life and you do see these unbelievable life-changing opportunities, do you take the time, sit back and really assess where you are positioned? Now, yes, I do think these markets can continue to roll on, but I also strongly believe we're going to see a heavy correction and a fantastic opportunity to get into there. I've covered off many times, I do feel like Bitcoin is now becoming overly centralized and moving itself away from the regular crypto market. When we look at altcoins, I do think in a matter of time, we're going to look at that altcoin market as a separate entity to Bitcoin, that these price movements will no longer be pegged together. That when we look at the market cycles, it is going to be the altcoin market cycle to look at. And inevitably, when we see Ethereum, perhaps Solana, XRP, the list goes on, when ETFs emerge from these, they again will separate themselves from the altcoin market. And that's just my view. I would like to know if you guys align with that, or if you think that's never the case and the altcoin market will continue to follow Bitcoin and its price action. Now, I also touched on the next 2 weeks and how vitally important they are for economics. First of all, we will go over to the economic calendar here, and we can see exactly what is going on. First of all, Chair Powell will testify in front of Congress over the state of monetary policy. What exactly do you think Powell is going to testify here? Now, we know the conditions that the markets are currently sitting in. We know that people are now burning through savings. Savings are at an all-time low. Inflation, interest is not in a good position, in my opinion. I do think something has to give. Of course, we are waiting for that Fed pivot. The jury is still out whether it's going to be a soft or a hard landing. Personally, I do think the worst will happen. That may just be the uber bear coming out of me, but when we look at the world as a whole, I do believe we're going to see an almighty correction, this of course being led on by the Fed pivot. But looking at these next 2 weeks, Fed Chair Powell's testimony is going to be crucial going forward. We of course have the European Central Bank's interest rates, another interesting metric, forecasted to be a pause once again. Then of course March 8th we have those non-farm payrolls, representing the number of jobs created over the month of February, and we can see this is set to drop almost half at 200,000 jobs forecasted, down from 353,000. Then of course we will have that unemployment rate, where there is forecasted of no change. Two very conflicting metrics to be reported on this week. Then of course we can fast forward to the 12th of March with the core inflation rate for America. This, of course, will be led on from the testimony that Jerome Powell has, understanding where inflation currently sits, where core inflation currently sits, another one you must be looking at over the next couple of weeks. Then lastly, to cover off there is the PPI for America, understanding what is actually costing for everything. Another metric, guys, to mark in your diaries, to keep an eye on for what's going on over the next couple of weeks. But lastly, I also want to cover off Tommy Tuberville, a very interesting politician who has a fantastic strike rate. He notoriously is one of the best performing politicians when it comes to the stock market, and there are some very interesting reasons behind this. He has a proven track record of beating the S&P 500, selling before it gets to its top, buying before it gets to its bottom, and riding the waves. Over the last few months, Tuberville has placed over 60 trades. 59 of those were sell orders on the stock market and a handful of put contracts. These, of course, being leveraged bets against the stock. Does he know something that we don't? Well, Tommy Tuberville sits on an unbelievable amount of committees over in the States. Could we see this as insider knowledge? Is he trading markets on information that we simply do not have access to? Perhaps unfair, perhaps insider trading, but this is somebody that we really have to keep our eyes on. If Tommy Tuberville, with an immense record of selling and buying at the right moments, is selling off, should we have our backs up here and understand that there is something about to happen? I wanted to cover that all off, give a bit of an understanding as to where I sit. Now, I do expect a fantastic movement to continue for Bitcoin. The ETF in itself is chewing through orders like nothing. We have, of course, seen an impressive run so far for the price, and this may continue, but equally this may not. The Fed pivot, I think, is going to be a likely reason we're going to see these markets pull back. Once the pivot happens, we will obviously have a slight delay in time before we do see that crash. But go back through the history and look at the Fed pivots, look at the traditional markets, and we see how those correct with that pivot. So all in all, I have made the decision, and that decision will come on Friday. One thing I can tell you is I will not be selling all of my crypto, but I will be selling Guys, stay tuned. Catch us once again on Friday, where I will be back to discuss that announcement, how much I'm selling, and the reasons behind it. I do hope you have enjoyed today's update. In yesterday's update, Nick spoke very boldly and bullishly on Ethereum, something you may not thought would ever happen. That video is right here, guys. I do encourage you to head on over and check it out.